thank everyone who could make it today. We're open with Pastor Dave, and so I'll give him say some words, just so we'll put it on our website. We're going to record it. If you're going to speak, you can come up by the podium, please. And again, everyone's invited to Willow/W afterwards. Jeanette and her family are invited for luncheon afterwards. Pastor?
Good morning. To welcome you as we've come here today to remember and celebrate the life of Raymond Harvey. As we begin, would you join me in prayer? God, you are our strength in times of weakness, our comfort in sadness, our help in times of struggle, and our life in the midst of death. Be with us in our time of need. As we take the time to remember and celebrate Ray Harvey, help us to do so in a way that honors him and shows gratefulness to you for the gift of his life. Thank you for the promise that if we put our trust in you, you will never leave us. Help us cling to you during this time, and please encourage our hearts with your peace and your love. Amen. Raymond Ray Harvey passed away on Saturday, May 21st, 2022. He was the beloved husband of 44 years to Jeanette Harvey. Born November 11th, 1948 in Willow Grove, he was the son of the late Alexander R. and Thelma J. Harvey. He was brother to the late Cynthia J. Randolph. He graduated from Upper Moreland High School in 1966. The year after his graduation, he enlisted in the Air Force Reserves as an airplane mechanic for 6 years and retired from the reserves as a sergeant in 1973. Following his time in the Air Force Reserves, Ray's occupational pursuits consisted almost entirely of jobs pertaining to another passion of his, cars. From a mechanic to a service manager at dealerships, from a debt collector specializing in cars to a copywriter for automobile publications, it was no secret that he loved nearly anything with an internal combustion engine. Outside of work, Ray built and flew an ultralight airplane for a decade and maintained a lifelong interest in aviation. He bought, rode, and sold a bevy of motorcycles over the course of his lifetime as well. Beyond his interest in driving and flying and fixing said driving and flying machines, Ray was an early adopter to computer technology, getting his first PC in 286 in the early 1990s. Entirely self-taught, he spent the rest of his life learning about computers and became his friend's resident IT guy. This hobby segued into his final job, the one he retired from, as an office manager and IT support person for an investment management firm. Ray was fortunate enough to enjoy over a decade in retirement. He spent his free time tinkering with his motorcycles, riding them with his wife, playing mini golf, staying politically engaged through the news, collecting music, and working on the family's genealogy. Along with his wife, Ray is survived by his daughter Stephanie and her husband, Nicholas Rheaume. And we just listened to some of the themes, some of the interests, some of the facts of Ray's life. But for those of you who knew Ray well, you knew that there was so much more to him than just those interests and themes and facts. And so we're going to hear from a couple of people who are going to share with us what some of that so much more. And first that's going to be Ray's good friend Dick, and then after that his daughter Stephanie.
Thank you, Reverend. My name is Dick Morris. These days of Twitter and Facebook, people seem to have a lot of friends, sometimes distant, sometimes faceless. And that's unfortunate. And some of us are blessed with lifelong friends like Ray and Jeanette. I was blessed to count Ray as a friend for more than 50 years. Actually, I knew him for just several weeks short of as long as I've known my wife. Actually, Ray was a good friend of Linda's brother, big brother. And so we met and we shared many interests over the years and spent many happy hours together. It was certainly a blessing to me. I would count Ray as a man of commitment, dedication, detail. And I think that's probably why the United States Air Force trusted him to be an aircraft mechanic, where those characteristics would be so especially important to those who rely on his skills and his dedication and his commitment. And so Ray pursued that in all aspects of his life, that commitment, dedication, and detail. And of course he pursued that in his passion for cars and motorcycles and aircraft, and he continued to do that. Ray and I were fortunate to spend a lot of time together. Early on, we would take motorcycle rides late at night through the city of Philadelphia, the River Drive and Isle, a small bike that was not real fancy, and he owned a larger bike that was fancy and spotless. And that was Ray's way of living and being. And so we would do that. Those attributes of his paid off in every aspect of his career. And he had several careers, as you heard the Reverend say, and as Stephanie so nicely put in his obituary. And whether it was working as a service manager at a dealership, or a self-taught computer technician, an IT expert, to technical automotive journalism, he and I worked together in automotive technical journalism. And he was always extremely detail-oriented, thorough, and precise. And so those attributes served him well in every aspect of his life. Ray had a sense of adventure. As many of you know, he built his own small ultralight aircraft. And in typical Ray's attention to detail, he bought a kit, he assembled it into an aircraft, and then he completely assessed it, and then he completely disassembled it, and he reassembled it to his own higher standards, because that's the kind of person Ray was. Ray also had a wonderful sense of humor, which I was blessed to enjoy with him. I know at one point his parents chose to buy a van to tour the country. And the van, I believe, was a former food truck of some sort, and on the side of the van were the letters "Good Food." And over the years, the words G and D and F and D had kind of faded out. And all that was left was the O's. And in Ray's typical good fortune, he referred to that as the ooh van. And as long as his parents owned it and drove it, they drove the ooh van, which was great fun for Ray. Ray enjoyed American cars and muscle cars. I had a bit of a passion for British sports cars, which were notorious for leaking oil. And that's just a characteristic. And Ray enjoyed giving me a hard time about that. And when I would make note of an MG that was leaking oil, he said, "Well, there's only one reason why an MG would not leak oil." And I said, "Well, what's that?" He said, "Because it's out of oil." And so Ray enjoyed that part very much. And I'll recount just one other bit of Ray's sense of humor, and that is, for many years, Ray and Jeanette would come over and we would share a Sunday evening dinner of my wife's famous lasagna. And we would have lasagna and admittedly a few glasses of red wine, after which we would enjoy a radio show that was, I hesitate to use the term tasteless, but it was funny and it was, okay, tasteless. And the show was hosted by a guy named Dr. Demento, and it was all fun and lighthearted stuff. And I know that two of Ray's favorite songs that they would play on that Sunday evening radio show that were especially funny after a couple glasses of red wine. One was The Cockroach That Ate Cincinnati, and the other was The Sound That's Made by Worms. And so he found those particularly funny and enjoyable. So we were blessed to share Ray's sense of humor with that. I will tell you that Ray hit the jackpot when he met Jeanette. Jeanette was a wonderful life partner for Ray, shared his sense of adventure, supported his passions and his interests, and of course, raised a wonderful daughter, Stephanie, who was blessed with many of Ray's interests and talents, and that's a wonderful legacy for our good friend Ray. And so as we share this day and this time together, I would just say to you, next time, the next time you hear thunder in the sky, it's probably Ray revving the engine of his motorcycle. Thank you all. God bless.
Can you guys hear me okay with the mask? Okay. I get a little boogery. Well, when I was thinking about my dad for this eulogy, I did some quick math. I'm 36, which means my dad became a father when he was 37. So he had his whole life before I came along, and I'm so glad that Dick can speak to that. And it was really cool to hear some of those memories that you'll hear that he shared with me as well. So many of my fondest memories of my dad are from childhood. One event in particular always stood out. Growing up, my mom was in a Friday night bowling league, and that meant it was Friday night pizza night with Dad. So we had a ritual. He would order from Crown Pizza down the street. After the order was placed, he would put on Kids Corner on the stereo, which was the kids' version of Dr. Demento. Silly songs, You're Now Yankovic, that kind of stuff. So when it was time to pick up from Crown, we would hop in the car, we would put Kids Corner on the radio, and we would hope out loud that we would hit all green lights, and in Willow Grove, no train crossings, so we'd get the pizza hot. When we get home, crack open a 40 of Moosehead, open his Newsweek, we finish out the night's Kids Corner show, and he let me eat all his pizza crusts, because I was a weird kid who didn't like cheese on my pizza, and I loved the crusts. And I love listening to silly parody songs on Friday nights with my dad. As we both aged, our relationship grew complicated, and I struggled with it over the years. Wondering why it was difficult to have a conversation with him and why our relationship could be challenging. But one perk of aging is you gain perspective on the road you travel. And a few years ago I learned about this thing called the 5 love languages. It's this concept that says humans show and receive love in 5 distinct ways. Through physical closeness, through words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, or through acts of service. And then often one category bubbles to the top as a person's subconscious preference in how they feel or communicate love. And I have spent years of my adult life wishing my dad would connect with me in the ways I preferred. But hey, it's Ray's world and we were living in it. Only upon his death did I realize that he was communicating his love in a way I never pieced together, that his love language was acts of service, where actions speak louder than words, and where acts of showing and sharing were his equivalent of saying I love you. So my dad spent my childhood sharing his interests with me. Some of my early forays into music, beyond pop radio, were from rummaging through his cassette collection, discovering bands like Led Zeppelin and Cheap Trick and the Beatles. My early introductions to humor were listening to the aforementioned parody songs and watching Mystery Science Theater 3000 together, sharing the newspaper funnies, especially the full-color Sunday edition. We got our family a personal computer in the early 90s, and we'd play DOS games like Ski Free and SimAnt. And soon after that, he would introduce me to Photoshop, which is a program I still use nearly every day. My dad also spent his life demonstrating the importance of family. He and my mom were married for 44 years. A true milestone. Excuse me. Her family became his. He bonded with my Uncle Lou, and he stood up for my grandmother when she needed it most. He visited his sister's grave in West Virginia every single year since she passed in 2013 to make sure that it was being cared for. He did so much for his parents in their final years, especially his mother when she was widowed and declining into Alzheimer's. And the through line of it all, his years of dedication to researching and recording our family genealogy. I mean, truly, it was like tons of research in the basement. My dad showed me how to navigate adulthood in the ways he knew best. My parents let me follow my passion to the least stable art degree out there, fine art. After I doubled down on that with a master's degree, they worked really hard to help me pay off my double load of student loan debt in the years following graduation. My dad forced me to start a 401k before I even knew what that letter combo even was. And he helped me buy my first car, my second car, my third car, and instilled in me the importance of regular oil changes, keeping a maintenance log. So when my dad got sick in May, it was really sudden and it was very shocking. Watching him in the hospital was truly one of the hardest things I've ever been through. But my mom and I talked about it. He knew he was on borrowed time. He had strokes in 2007. And man, he made the most of it all the ways he wanted to. He retired early, over a decade of retirement, tinkering on his computer, purchasing a fleet of motorcycles, traveling with my mom, playing mini golf, eating Burger King breakfast, napping whenever he wanted. You know, he really lived it up in his special ways. And my mom has said, and I have said, his email signature he read, "Enjoy life now, it has an expiration date." So, my dad was a man who ordered takeout spaghetti and meatballs. My dad was a man who wore sweatbands everywhere, but I never saw him once work out a day in the gym. My dad was a man who showed me the movie 2001: Space Odyssey when I was like 6 or 8 years old, far too young for that movie. My dad was a man who kept a spreadsheet to track his Costco savings to make sure he made that $50 membership fee back, everything he bought. My dad was a man who started wearing overalls in the 1950s. You can look at that slideshow, and he kept it going until 2022. He loved overalls. My dad was a man who delighted in visiting local libraries to pirate their music collection. To check out all their CDs and rip all their music. My dad was a man who once set a backyard on fire by burning trash when it was not legal to. I was supposed to be doing that. My dad was a man who was the definition of an aggressive driver, yet he had a teddy bear strapped to the back of his motorcycle at all times. My dad was a man who would drive you to or from the airport at any hour, but do so in total silence like your favorite Uber driver. My dad was a man who would constantly forward news articles and email when they reminded him of you. My dad was a man who he laminated a piece of our baby blanket to me during a father-daughter dance at my wedding. My dad was a one-of-a-kind person and a father, and he will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick and Stephanie, for what you shared. I think in addition to really honoring Ray, you both give us a lot of wisdom that we can take into our own life journeys. Would you join me as we close in prayer? God, at this time, we commit Ray Harvey to you. Give us strength and peace as we do so, knowing that you can be trusted with him. We leave Ray in the hands of a just and compassionate God who always does what is right. We pray for the family, friends, and loved ones present, that they might experience your power and love at this time. We ask that you help them to cast their cares on you and find comfort as they do so. Give them the peace that you say surpasses our understanding. Knowing that death will be the reality for all of us who are living, should you delay your coming, let us live each day wisely in dependence on you. May our trust be in Jesus, who said, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believes in me shall never die. Amen. This time we'll be concluding our service. Thank you for coming here this morning to remember and celebrate.
This time, would anyone else like to share any words? I appreciate everything. We'll be on our website. Give me a little bit of time. I have to record it, put it up there, so the next day or two or sooner. Again, we want to pay final respects before everyone's invited to go to the Willow. Appreciate the family day. Really, 30-some years is the first. Really like the gas tank. Can't wait till we show up the cemetery. So at this point, if you want to pay final respects, if not, proceed to your cars. Thank you. You can turn that off.